When we picture a Roman marriage, we tend to think of all the romantic stuff, right? Saffron veils, big celebrations, festive songs. But behind that pretty picture lies a really disturbing and systematic truth, a reality for Roman women that was pretty much deliberately erased from history. Just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence just captures the chilling reality for so many Roman women. Their wedding night wasn't some celebration of love. Nope. It was a cold, legal procedure that was all about one thing: verification. So what exactly needed to be verified, and how? Well, the answer is way more shocking than you're probably thinking. So to dive into this hidden world, let's meet our guide. We'll call her Livia Tursa. She's 18 years old, and the year is 89 CE. Now, her wedding day really had two completely different faces. On one hand, you have the public part, full of tradition, celebration, the whole deal. But then there's the hidden part, the part that really mattered. And that one took place behind sealed doors, with silent witnesses, and it all centered on this mysterious shrouded figure. As Livia was getting ready for all this, her mother gives her this just terrifying and cryptic warning. I mean, this isn't advice for a happy marriage. This is a desperate plea for survival. It's a warning about an ordeal she knows her daughter is about to face, but one she just can't bring herself to explain. Okay, so to really understand the horror that was waiting for Livia, we have to look past the public ceremony, because behind all the festive songs and scattered walnuts was this cold, hard, legal procedure. Her wedding wasn't a party, it was a contract. And right at the heart of this contract was a legal concept called in manu. See, a Roman woman was basically never independent. She was passed from her father's hand, literally, directly into her husband's. She wasn't becoming a partner. She was, in the eyes of the law, a piece of property being transferred. And the Roman logic behind this whole ceremony was, well, it was brutally simple. If marriage is a property transfer, then just like any other big transaction, like, say, buying a farm, it needs witnesses. And in this transaction, the asset being transferred was the bride's body and her ability to produce legitimate heirs. So that means the asset's value, her virginity, had to be verified. It's a brutal system, but it's also brutally logical. All right, so let's get back to Livia. Her public ceremony is over. With all that cold legal logic in mind, she now enters her new husband's home, and the door is sealed behind her. The room is filled with strangers, an overseer, a physician, some slaves, and over in the corner, something is hidden under a heavy cloth. The overseer, a woman they called the pranuba, leads Livia over to this shrouded object. She tells Livia that she has to greet a god she's never even heard of, a god named Mutinus Tutinus, and ask for his blessing. The witnesses all lean in a little closer. The room goes completely silent. And when the cloth is pulled away, Livia finally understands her mother's tears. It's a large wooden idol, carved with, well, unsettling anatomical accuracy, into the shape of a phallus. This was Mutinus Tutinus, this shadowy god of fertility, and greeting him wasn't just saying a simple prayer. It was a physical act of submission. Centuries later, a Christian writer, Augustine of Hippo, would describe the whole ritual with absolute disgust. He wrote that brides were forced to sit upon or even mount this idol. It was an act designed to just break down any resistance and prove submission, all while her new husband and a room full of official witnesses just watched. So you're probably wondering, how in the world do we even know about this? Well, ironically, it's because early Christian writers like Augustine were so horrified by these pagan rites that they wrote them all down just so they could condemn them. The Roman historians themselves, they were often too embarrassed to describe it in any detail, so the Christians' fury actually preserved the very history they wanted to destroy. But this deeply traumatic ritual, believe it or not, that wasn't the end of Livia's ordeal. The legal verification was really just getting started. The whole verification was this clinical, four-part process. It started with a premarital medical exam to basically document her virginity as a baseline. Then, after the ritual with Mutinus Tutinus, there was another exam to confirm her submission. After that came the consummation. And then finally, at dawn, one last medical check to confirm the marriage was physically complete. You notice the one constant there? Yep. Witnesses were always present. And I really need to stress this, there was no intimacy here. There was zero privacy. The pranuba, that official overseer, literally stood in the open doorway all night long, making sure the contract was fulfilled according to the law. Every sound, every movement, it was all part of the official record. So at dawn, the final examination was done. Livia Terza, at just 18 years old, was now legally a wife. Her body's status had been documented and witnessed. And like millions of Roman women before her and after her, she would go on to live her life as a proper matron. And she would never, ever speak of her wedding night. Livia's story was a story of millions, and yet we almost never hear it. So if this was so common, why has this brutal reality been almost totally erased from how we think about Rome? Well, the main reason is that these rituals were just the water Roman women swam in. They were so normal, so deeply baked into the culture that nobody even thought to write them down. I mean, you don't write a diary entry about breathing, right? The silence wasn't some big conspiracy. It was just the sound of the status quo. The actual erasure, that came later, and it was deliberate. As Christianity rose, it brought this huge shift in values. Marriage wasn't a property transfer anymore. It was a sacred sacrament. The body was a temple, not an asset. So from this new perspective, the old rituals weren't just outdated, they were obscene, a kind of moral pollution. So they were purged. Statues of Mutinus Tutinus were smashed, texts describing the rites were burned or just left to rot, and an entire chapter of Roman life was actively and very effectively forgotten. And the result of that erasure is this massive gap between our perception and the reality. We're left with that charming public face of Roman marriage, the songs and saffron veils, while the actual historical reality for women like Livia, a reality of legal verification and total control, was almost completely wiped from the record. What this story really shows us is something deeply unsettling, that a society can be legally sophisticated, culturally refined, and at the exact same time build its entire foundation on systematic dehumanization. The two things are not mutually exclusive. And that just leaves us with this final, lingering question. The story of Roman marriage was deliberately rewritten. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other uncomfortable truths were silenced to create the grand, celebrated histories we've all been taught to admire?